Hi, Taylor T. Carlson here, and we're doing another 4K review today. You know me, you know that I'll never get tired of old westerns, and the Man with No Name trilogy from director Sergio Leone remains some of my personal favorite films in the genre. These classic spaghetti westerns have been re-released more times in the last few years than I can count, with a lot of different transfers, remasters, and so forth. And now, after having gotten The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on 4K last year, we now get the first two films in the Dollars trilogy on 4K. These are A Fistful of Dollars from 19 and For a Few Dollars More from 1965. The movies, of course, would be released in America a few years later. So I'm going to do unboxings for these releases, and I'll share my opinions. Let's start out with The Fistful of Dollars, the first film in this trilogy. And these both have slip covers, of course. Underneath here, we've got pretty much the same thing. Then in here, we have our discs. No reversible artwork on these ones, unfortunately. And then we have the sequel, For a Few Dollars More. Now, like I said, these movies are part of a trilogy, although it's debatable as to whether or not these are meant to be sequels or prequels to one another, because some actors play different characters in each movie. For instance, Lee Van Cleef plays I guess you could consider him a good character in For a Few Dollars More, but in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he played the main bad guy. So I would argue that all of these are standalone films rather than sequels. It's been suggested that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is a prequel to the earlier two films because it's set during the Civil War and because Clint Eastwood gradually acquires the clothing he wears in the other two movies. In either event, we won't get too hung up on that. A Fistful of Dollars starts out the trilogy. This time around, Clint Eastwood's no-name outlaw wanders into a town where there's two rival families, a family of bandits and a family that's headed by a corrupt sheriff, and these two are constantly at war with one another. His character is looking to make money, so he settles down in town and makes friends with an innkeeper and a casket maker. Before long, he's playing both sides of this conflict against one another, tricking them into killing one another while at the same time managing to profit and make a pretty decent amount of money for himself along the way. But eventually, will his scheme be figured out, and will he meet a grisly end? This is a great start to this trilogy. Unfortunately, the movie was essentially an unauthorized remake of the Japanese samurai film Yojimbo, which resulted in lawsuits from the Toho company in Japan. However, that doesn't stop this from being a great film, and Clint Eastwood's performance really steals the show. There are some great moments in here, from shootouts in the desert to plenty of his interesting scheming scenes throughout the movie. I don't know if I'd quite say this tops Yojimbo, the Japanese film which it's a remake of, which starred the always entertaining Toshiro Mifune, but I do think Eastwood puts his own spin on this character, and there's a reason that it's revered as a classic. The sequel, For a Few Dollars More, revolves around characters who are bounty killers who go around killing outlaws to collect the bounty money on them. Clint Eastwood's outlaw, once again, comes into several towns looking to kill villains and turn them over for the money, but he comes across a situation where he meets his match when he comes across a rival outlaw portrayed by Lee Van Cleef. The two have goals to go after the gang of the notorious bandit El Indio, and what they ultimately end up deciding to do is join forces and concoct a scheme so they can infiltrate Indio's gang, eventually robbing them of their pillaging from a recent bank robbery. This movie cranks things up after the original. It's a totally original story, unlike the first film, which was an unauthorized remake of a Japanese film. And it's a very underrated film. Everyone talks about the first movie in this trilogy and the last one, but the second one may honestly be my personal favorite of the bunch. Hard to say because they're all pretty good, but this one manages to create some really suspenseful and unpredictable situations, and seeing how our heroes are going to get out of this, as well as finding out about the past between El Indio and Lee Van Cleef's character, gives it an interesting bit of backstory that I think the first movie tended to be a little lacking in. It is a very good movie overall, and I don't know if either one of these movies outdoes The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which I'd previously reviewed on here, but they are phenomenal classic spaghetti westerns from the great Sergio Leone, of course featuring fantastic musical scores by Ennio Morricone, who was Leone's principal collaborator. And of course, Morricone would go on to do a lot of other film scores into later years, including movies like Cinema Paradiso, which wasn't even a western. And in more recent years, prior to his death, he did the score for Quentin Tarantino's western, The Hateful Eight. So that guy certainly got around in his composer career. So you've probably already bought these movies countless times on various formats. How do these 4K discs measure up? There is no HDR on either of these, but it doesn't mean they don't look good. I mean, these are very, dirty, grimy looking films just due to the nature of the material. But these are in all ways a step up from earlier releases because they've made a lot of fixes to the not so good color timing that was on some of the earlier releases of the films. And of course, things like the colors and fine object detail definitely get the increase you would expect from a 4K presentation. And I think for most fans of the movies, these are going to be a nice step up, and I don't think they'll be disappointed with what they see here. From what I can tell, there are no new bonus features, but pretty much everything from the earlier releases is ported over here, so you get a lot of interesting things, including a censored television prologue from Fistful of Dollars that aired before the movie when it was on TV to try to justify the nature of what Clint Eastwood does in the movie. And then you get some of those trailers from Hell segments that are always a lot of fun to watch. And if you just sit down and scroll through the menus as a fan of these films, you're going to be busy for a few hours just on the basis of the special features. Honestly, I haven't sat down and watched every single thing on here yet, but I can pretty much assure you I will, seeing as how big of a fan of these movies I am. Are you a fan of these spaghetti westerns from Sergio Leone? Have you picked them up on 4K yet? Have you gotten The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? What's your favorite of the trilogy? Comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel for more content because I'm always posting new videos, and make sure you give this one a like if you found it helpful. I'm Taylor T. Carlson. I'll see you next time.